and welcome to the inaugural Spartan Talks. My name is Samuel Chen. I serve as Assistant Professor of Political Science here at Northampton Community College, and I have the pleasure of introducing our inaugural speaker for Spartan Talks today. Spartan Talks is a new program here at the college. It's a TED Talk-like program that is unique to our college, featuring the work of our college's elite adjunct faculty. One of the many aspects that makes Northampton Community College great is that our faculty are not merely scholars of their discipline, but practitioners in the field. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to thank both Mary Lou Collis and Barbara Hominy, who have, despite working from home, have been instrumental in setting up our setup today. I also want to thank Dean Patrick Grubbs, who is the Associate Dean in the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Spartan Talks is the child of Dean Grubbs, so to speak. He birthed the idea. It has been his vision, and he is the reason that we're here today. We wouldn't be here without him. And so we want to give our thanks to Dean Grubbs for his inspiration and his work in getting this here today. Expanding beyond this classroom, beyond its traditional four walls, Spartan Talks is the premier platform for our adjunct faculty to both showcase their work and for our students to meet the faculty and experience the real-world impact and opportunities that they can have. I'm excited about our speaker today. Professor Keith Fallows has been at the community college since August of 2019. In the short time that he's been with us, he's become quickly a student favorite. He is the recipient of the Phi Theta Kappa Golden Apple Award in 2019 and was named Northampton Community College's Adjunct Professor of the Year in 2020. He teaches in our English department, teaching both English 1 and English 2, and he holds his Master of the Fine Arts in Creative Writing from Rosemont College and a Bachelor of Arts in English from Newman University. He's originally from the southeastern part of Pennsylvania, and as such is an avid Philadelphia Flyers fan and insists that Wawa is superior to Sheetz. With apologies to our favorite dean from the western half of our state, Dean Grubbs. You can take that up with him later. Professor Keith, as he is affectionately called by his students, today his talk will be called The Drive for Fear. His research interests are in the philosophical and ethical questions raised in the horror genre, including the ability of horror to exploit facts and create fictional stories. In this talk, Professor Keith will be examining the horror genre's use of imaginary villains, such as demons, zombies, and ghosts, as opposed to those that truly exist, such as psychopaths and Nazis, and whether and how this shift impacts our understanding of both history and the contemporary. In perfect timing for the upcoming Halloween holiday, Professor Keith's talk will connect the ever-popular horror genre with the real impact of how we understand history, both in the present day and the ethical questions that it raises. Without any further ado, would you please join me in welcoming Professor Keith Fallows.
I'm back. This time I'm told that we can, I'm heard. Just project. That's the name of the game. I'm excited to follow Sam's beautiful introduction. Thank you, Sam, and be here at Spartan Talks. Excitement is an interesting word because fear is exciting, right? Fear is something that we look for the sense of thrill, whether it's on a roller coaster, dropping from the top of a hill, or going to a horror film that is said to be the most frightening in America, which, of course, every horror film claims that title, yet it's up to us to decide whether it is or not. Now, it was said that I'm going to talk about villains, both real and fiction, opposed to both fiction and reality as opposed to each other. Because at most turns, they reflect one another. But I'm going to talk about them in the context not of film or books, which we're used to finding horror in. I'm going to talk about them in a more American pastime, which we all know as the haunted house or the haunted attraction, whether it be a corn maze with chainsaw bearing masked men chasing you around, or the more extreme haunted houses where you have to sign a waiver, you are allowed to be touched by the actors, thrown in a fridge and left there for 3 hours, perhaps, and escape rooms where you and a team have to work together to escape. Obviously, the name escape room tells you all you need to know on that. But what about these places that makes them so American and unique is that they're not very popular outside our borders. We Americans seem to want to embrace fear, especially during times of great distress. Particularly, American haunted houses came to prominence during the Great Depression. And that shouldn't really surprise anyone, but it might. Because why during such a time called the Depression would people who are depressed want to go and be afraid? Well, the answer is both simple and complicated, based on whether you know yourself and those around you. The look for fear in a haunted house was because it's fear that they know. It's fear that they're allowed to have manifest and not be mocked, not look weak in front of children. During the Depression, people found themselves out of work, unable to eat, and on top of that, the Dust Bowl ravaged farmland. There were lies about jobs in the West, such as California, and of course, when many arrived, there were no jobs, and suffering continued. The villains there were figurative less than physical. I mean, they were more figurative than physical. The physical villains in these haunted houses at the end of the day were not going to do anything to you. Once this was over, they are just men in masks playing the role, actors, if you will. Whereas economic devastation, the blame is shared between multiple people, perhaps nobody, and perhaps nobody saw it coming, and perhaps some people did, and they claim we didn't, which is psychopathic, believe it. Psychopaths in haunted houses are our chainsaw-bearing friends, are the people who are dressed as plague doctors working on a live person in horrible ways, flaying them, opening them as you're walking through, and you're allowed to scream. But just like in the Depression, we're in this era of uncertainty again with coronavirus around the country, economic devastation, people out of work, drug rates and through the roof. And these are horrors that are hard to talk about. So when we look in the contemporary haunted world, as I said earlier, the haunted world, as we talk about haunted attractions, we see the more extreme haunted houses, like McCaney Manor, if some of you have heard of that on the net, which was showcased on the Netflix show, Dark Tourism. McCaney Manor, you sign a waiver and anything can be done to you, physical or mental. You could have a box of spiders put on your head and your hands are trained behind your back. You can have one of those I don't know the tools, if there are any dentists present that keep your mouth wide open and your teeth bared so that they can poke things up it. And you only get a safe word that when you utter it, they let you go. Sometimes they may hold you underwater or actually waterboard you until you start coughing up. That's real fear, right? But it's fear that you know you can stop. It's a familiar fear. You don't know when you can stop a disease. You don't know when you can stop a economic downturn. The red line can just keep dropping, right? Stocks only go up. That changes sometimes very quickly, as we've seen throughout the years. And there's a level of chaos present in the economic devastation that we witness, right? The uncertainty brings chaos. As weird and strange as the extreme haunted houses like McCaney Manor or Shocktober here in Pennsylvania sound, they are not chaotic. They can be stopped. They're structured events that you pay money to go to. And as I said, they're uniquely American. Only recently we've outsourced such things to these ideas. And by outsourcing, I mean parks in Japan and the United Kingdom have tried to model them. As far as the extremity level, I'm unfamiliar with it. But that level of extreme fear that we try harder and harder to make authentic for when we go to a haunted attraction is fascinating, because there's extreme examples all around us. And at times, sometimes we take it upon ourselves to break laws, to go feel scared, right? I know nobody present in front of me or on Zoom has gone to an alleged haunted house in their neighborhood, jumped the no trespassing sign, gone inside and explored it. Every town has an urban legend, that's worldwide. But for whatever reason, it seems that only American teenagers and adults, definitely not me, like to go to these places and walk around them. In Pennsylvania, we have Nike missile bases, which were established in the event that the USSR, the Soviet Union, launched nukes at us. The Nike missile base's job was to shoot those nuclear weapons down. Now they're just sitting and rusting alongside of steel mills. But the funny thing is, many of us don't know that they were there. We didn't realize how serious our government took the threat of a nuclear attack, yet we were still frightened. We were afraid. Not me, I wasn't born then, I'm just using we because it's fun to talk like a hive mind. It is almost probably now. But yes, that fear of a nuclear attack can now be exploited. And it is in films and video games like Fallout. Right? If you go to these Nike missile bases, and I'm not endorsing that you do, and I'm also saying just if you are there to cooperate with any authority and leave. But if you've been to one, you see rot. Signs that a U.S. military installation was once here, and there was one very close to my town, and I won't name it, so nobody goes. But it's interesting to see the vines, the vegetation reclaiming that area. A place that was a symbol of anxiety and fear and the unknown. H.P. Lovecraft believed that the fear of the unknown was the most common and most useful form of fear because it's so authentic and it's very much in our realm in the mixed up words. It's very much relatable to everyone. We've all had fear of the unknown, whether we've had a loved one go through horrible health issues or we've shared, as I say, economic devastation. Which is the one I talk about the most because in financial terms, uncertainty is a scary word. And those of you in finance probably understand it. Uncertainty is also scary in medical terms. There is no uncertainty when you go to the haunted house. And in America, we do love our capitalism, and I don't mean that as a bad thing. I'm just saying that there's a lot of money to be made, scaring the hell out of people, going and inviting them to come feel where you are allowed to be afraid. Whereas at the house where you're seeing how many bills are piling up, how much money you owe, you're not allowed to be afraid in front of your wife or children, or at least subconsciously, you may not feel that way. So when you go to these places and they scare you, you're allowed to show fear. You're allowed to be afraid, and it's relieving. If we want to segue into Freudian terms, it's an aphrodisiac. Those of us who are looking for a love life. There's an old trope where you watch horror movies where boy and girl go to X horror movie and they're holding hands tighter and tighter as the fear increases more and more. Sometimes they go to haunted houses together and let's look at the atmosphere. Maybe it matches something we're familiar with. Dark. It's dark in here. We're holding each other tight. And when the fear hits, it's climactic, which, you know, Freud, we know what we're referring to with climax, with fear. And yes, it is very much an aphrodisiac. Fear is something that allows you to be relieved in terms of both love and daily life, because we try so hard not to be afraid, when in fact, every day we are allowed to be afraid, and we're allowed to show our fears. We're learning that now as a country, with the uncertainty going on with, as I said earlier, economic devastation as a result of the novel coronavirus. A great writer, British author, Neil Gaiman, in his book for young kids, Coraline, which is a horror for young kids, he wrote it for his daughters, and he said he wrote it for them because he wanted them to understand bravery is being afraid and doing what is right anyway. Bravery is not about not being afraid. It's about embracing the fear, but doing what must be done anyway. Showing that you're not afraid makes you more like a psychopath, as Gaiman would say. Now, I want to leave off by just saying that what I've been working with lately, but don't really have a full way to articulate it well enough, is the fear of the mundane, the boredom. I feel that what we're all kind of going through or able to relate to is an idea of boredom as the worst torture possible. Having nowhere to go, nothing to do, nobody to see, and being alone too long with your thoughts. Allowing you, where that's healthy, to try and organize your thoughts and think them out. But when that's overdone again and again every day with no aim or conclusion, it can lead to self-blame, more use of alcohol, more use of drugs, depression, because you're worrying about things that aren't there. It's just your boredom trying to entertain itself. But I have more to dig in there than I can articulate here today. So with that, Sam wants to start the question and answer.